Hey friends, welcome to this week's episode of Not Your Mama's Podcast. Our special guest today is Yiannah, who is an expert in soul contracts and helping people understand their soul's wisdom. She will guide us through the fascinating world of soul contracts and how they can bring clarity and purpose to our lives. Yiannah, I'm so excited to talk about this topic. We had such a great conversation before the recording, and it's so enlightening when you can really understand like your soul contract and that you can actually like feel that the answers are, like truth to yourself. That makes
Yeah, it does. And first of all, thank you for having me. And the thing is, knowing your soul contract is one of those that it really gets you to understand why you think the way you do. What are my challenges? What am I going through? And how can I break through them? I don't have to be stuck in the mud of life. And I think that's like one of my favorite things because it's not like, oh, here's where you struggle. Have a good day. You're
yeah.
actually diving into how can I transmute all this tough stuff, all this tough energy to actually benefit me in life.
So let's just break it down into simple terms. Can you explain what a soul contract is if this is someone's first time hearing this word or concept?
Yes. So a soul contract is essentially it is your birth name. Before you incarnated, your soul chose what it wanted to accomplish and learn in this lifetime. It chose your parents, what you're going to look like when you're going to be born. It also chose its name. So within your birth name that was intuitively sent to your parents, we convert the letters of your name into sound frequency. And through that sound frequency, we can actually see the karma, the challenges that you came in with, the talents and gifts of service that you have to offer that are like innate in you, your goals, like what does your soul want to accomplish in this lifetime and your overall soul's purpose. So we're looking at like your soul's plan, like what is going on for you. And the thing is that what I really want to focus on is the fact that when people hear karma, they think of something that they're going to be forever stuck in and they can't get out of. So knowing that your karma is actually meant to be transmuted into some of your biggest gifts and knowing that is invaluable.
Yeah. Well, and I also think it kind of like clarifies like the thought changing patterns in your head too, to know like, yeah, like I am meant for this. This was like my God-given born identity like within me, and it's like
Oh yeah.
it can, so it can kind of help boost that confidence because we know that life is your thoughts, and your realities and your perspective. So being able to change them and have confidence in them, it would, game changer.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why like we even get people who will optimize their name. So every time you change your name, you're bringing in a whole new set of frequencies. Some of them may actually hinder your growth. They may rub against your original frequencies that you have going on, and they can make life a bit harder. And some of them may actually make your life easier where you can reach goals faster, transmute karma easier. So it's always really important. I tell people all the time when they're married, make sure you actually know what you're bringing in if you want to take on your husband's name, or
Yeah.
if in general you just want to change your name. Well, what do you want to bring in? And let's work on bringing in those frequencies.
Oh yeah. Well, that's good. Like never really thought about that. And
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah.
and then like also, I mean, well, I kind of get that now too because of, our conversation earlier and about my soul contract, which is super awesome to talk about in terms of like, I think anyone, I love like the topic and I think anyone should just go, it doesn't hurt, you know what I mean, to have that
Right.
conversation. But like, in also understanding the soul contracts, like, how can that help us also break the negative patterns in our lives?
Look, when you understand where you struggle or where your challenge is, and you put focus into that, the beauty of this system is that it does have a lot of recommendations on ways to break through it. It is very much like, for example, if you are very unfocused, part of that 6-6 energy we talked about earlier, if you're very unfocused, you can't complete tasks. There are specific ways and specific things to do things that break you free of that. Also, some are just as simple as getting creative. I don't care if you draw for 10 minutes a day, move your body, do something that's creative, and that'll get you unstuck in life and refocused.
Mhm.
And some of the things are obviously more, if you've experienced any types of abuse or anything like that, trauma, it does include more intense therapies, right?
Yeah.
But some are super simple ways that you could literally start doing today and notice the impact in your life. The only thing is, you have to want to make the change in your life. And there is that 5 year cycle, we like to call it, where our life runs in these 7 year cycles. And in the 5th year cycle, 35 to 42 years old, is when most people have their awakening, which traditionally starts off as a dark night of the soul.
Oh
Life
yeah.
starts to fall apart, and you're like, every door in front of me is closed and closing. And you're like, my life, I don't even know where I'm going, what it means. I want a deeper connection to source. I need everything to change. And it's like spirit knocks you over so they can redirect you
Yeah.
to where you want to be. And so knowing your soul contract could really help guide you to achieving whatever that goal is.
Yeah, I totally understand. And so it's like, what are also some common signs for people who um aren't really like aligned with their soul contract? Like what type of things can show up, like little identifiers or triggers if someone's not getting like the big slap or going through that actual dark night through the soul moment.
Right. Which is what most people will have. They will experience that. And many times you don't even realize you're going through it until you're
Yeah.
like knee deep in it.
Yeah.
But there'll be like redirections. You'll lose your job. Your relationship will fall apart. Things will just start showing up for you where they're just exiting your life. And you're like, what is happening? And it's like the soul's trying to redirect you. We're closing down this door gently so you can go to the next one. But if you are stuck in the mud and you're like, I'm just gonna be stubborn and stay here, that's when you get that spiritual 2x4 that comes in and it's like, hey, we really need you to go a different way.
Yeah.
This is not serving you. And that will hit you harder, right? But it's one of those where as humans, we are very much stuck in our ways and
Yeah.
how we think things will happen. But if you ask people, the things they believed in even 5 years ago are
Mhm.
different than the things you believe in today.
Exactly.
Right. So that's part of that growth. And
Yeah.
these little things will happen that lead you to that direction.
And, how can mothers, or really anyone, but let's just focus on mothers, like kind of use that knowledge of soul contracts to better navigate their support with their children and through their like motherhood experiences?
That is actually my favorite part of soul contracts because you can actually look at the relationship dynamics, not just with children, but for example, you, the father, and your children, or you and your girlfriend, your parents, siblings, whoever it is. But I love looking at it. For example, I have a little girl and I named her before I knew anything about soul contracts. So once I pulled up our charts, I saw, as if I needed a chart to tell me, we had this karmic clash. We are these two stubborn Taurus bulls that just, I'm strong willed and she's strong willed, and
Yeah.
who's going to win? And actually seeing her chart, it allowed me to understand exactly how she moves and how she thinks in life. And it allowed me to work with her in a way where we didn't have to charge at each other. She feels like she won. I feel like, as the adult, the parent, that the situation won, and it's beautiful. And you really get to see this beautiful perspective and really get to understand your child inside and out. And
Yeah.
when you do that and you work with that, it is life-changing.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean, and we do know our children, and I've like talked about it with like other people before, like, okay, how's Cole doing? And things like that for my oldest and then my youngest. And like, oh, he likes to help, like try to do things this way. And like when I do that, like I do have a better outcome.
Yeah.
But it's like, and I think a lot of sometimes the push and pull and headbutting dynamic in parents is just not really understanding like who they genuinely are. Like, yes, you know your children and their habits and you have that connection, but like the way they operate like subconscious on a subconscious level.
Oh, yeah. And if you do have that child that just pushes every single button,
Yeah.
more likely than not, you have a 4 frequency somewhere in your chart. And it is intentional. And it's not about that kid is bad or acting
No.
out or
Yeah.
misbehaving. It is more for you to learn to become unconditionally loving to that child specifically, because once you put all your stuff aside and really just love and focus on that child, what happens is they then in return will become your biggest source of unconditional love. And that relationship will be amazing, but it's about getting through that. And when you understand that that is just something that your soul kind of set up for you, and it's not like just this misbehavior, it changes everything.
Exactly. And that's a good way to put it. And because I
Yeah.
feel like our biggest lesson is through our children. They teach us so
Yeah,
much about ourselves.
totally. If your child hasn't taught you anything,
Yeah. It is time for the Power Mom Chronicles segment, and I cannot wait to dive into your answers. And my first question to you is, what's a game-changing lesson life has taught you?
no one's going to love you the way you love yourself. If you don't put yourself first, no one's going to do it for you. If you don't pour into yourself, no one's going to pour into you like that. And what I noticed most was the thing that we yearn for in other people is really the thing that we don't give ourselves the most. So when you turn and redirect back into you, you're better for your children, you're better for your spouse, you're better for everybody in your life. And most importantly, you are filling yourself with love.
Yeah.
When you fill yourself with love, you can be nothing but giving of love. And so for me, it was understanding that no one else was going to do that for me. And I had to invest in myself because I'm a self-sacrificer. I will put your feelings before mine. And I had to set that boundary and go, no, I'm just as valuable as you. I have to put on my mask first on the airplane, right? Before I can help somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And it's kind of like jumping and piggybacking, but also reflecting on your journey. What other lessons or insights can listeners apply to improve their own lives?
Um, I think something that's very undervalued is gratitude.
Yeah, totally.
And it seems so simple and like not a big deal, but giving gratitude every day. You wake up, thank you, God, thank you, Source, for this beautiful day. I have a roof over my head. I have a beautiful child. I have financial security, like everything you have, focus on those things and just give gratitude to the universe. Because as you thank the universe, you're also getting that back.
Yeah.
Right. And I think what it does is it alters that mindset and it gets you going into a really good start of your day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And offer a piece of wisdom for moms or anyone really trying to strive to find their strength and voice.
If this is child related, my answer is follow through. Do
Mhm.
not make any threats or say anything that you can't follow through.
Yeah.
Because what I learned was children also need boundaries. They also need to understand I know exactly what I'm going to get from mom or dad. And
Yeah.
they also need structure. As much as they may hate that structure, they need it.
They
So I
do.
learned very early on, even though my daughter is very young, I have to follow through because that one time that I don't do the thing that I said I was going to do, it's game over. Because now she's like, oh, well, you didn't do it that other time. You're not going to do it now. And then you start this whole new war game of pushing boundaries. So I think standing firm, and it doesn't make you a bad parent. It doesn't make you any of those things. We're not meant to be their best friend right now,
Yeah.
in certain situations. You just have to do the thing that serves the highest good for everybody. And sticking to that follow through has been like, I know for me, my number one saving grace, like
Yeah.
hands down.
Yeah. No, I think that's really great advice because I have that push and pull too. It's like you got to stick to your words. And my last question is the best advice you've ever received.
Don't allow others to decide who you are. We live in a very critical society where people think that you should act and speak and show up in a certain way. And what that does is it shuts you down from really showing your authentic self, right? Authenticity is something we talked about. The day I stepped into my authenticity, which was not maybe 2 years ago, I really was like, you know what? I don't give a shit. Sorry.
It's
I,
okay.
okay.
I'm
I
a
don't
truck driver.
care. Right. So I am who I am and I love every part of me and I'm going to show up authentically.
Yeah.
And when I did that, there were people who had an issue with it. And then there were some people who were like, okay, cool. And you know what? You can't change yourself for other people. So
Mhm.
be who you want to be. If you're not hurting anybody, God bless,
Yeah.
you know? So
So
yeah.
Well, I love that. Well, thank you for everyone who listened to this week's episode of Not Your Mama's podcast. Yiannah's links are all down below in the show notes. Don't be shy, go say hi, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye.